My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old. And those words, we already went last week. It was for only blood-related family. They cut through me like a blade dipped in poison. $22,000. That's what I paid for their Hawaii vacation. $22,000, and it didn't buy me a single seat at their table. It didn't even buy me the courtesy of a lie. I stood there in my mother's kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd eaten cereal before school for 18 years, where I'd celebrated birthdays and shared Christmas mornings, and I realized something that shattered every foundation I'd built my life on. Money didn't make me family in their eyes. Love didn't make me family. 18 years of calling them mom and dad didn't make me family. I was adopted, and in that moment, that's all I would ever be to them. The humiliation burned through my chest like acid. I felt erased. Not just excluded, erased. As if every memory we'd shared, every I love you exchanged, every moment I'd believed I belonged had been nothing more than a performance. A lie they'd grown tired of maintaining. Before we begin this journey into the darkest corners of betrayal, I need you to do something. Drop a comment below with your country and what time it is right now where you're watching. Whether it's sunrise in the United Kingdom, midnight in New York, afternoon in Canada, or evening in Australia, I want to know. Don't just sit back. Tell me where in the world you are. Now, let's dive into the story. The drive home from their house felt like drowning in slow motion. Every red light stretched into eternity. Every familiar street corner mocked me with memories of a childhood that suddenly felt like borrowed time. I pulled into the parking lot of my cramped apartment complex, the same complex I'd been saving to move out of for 3 years, and sat in my car until the engine ticked cold. My apartment was a studio. 400 square feet of proof that 28 years of life had amounted to nothing more than a mattress on the floor and a microwave that worked half the time. While I sat on my bed that night, still wearing the clothes I'd worn to their house, still smelling like their expensive candles and their judgment, I knew they were probably planning their next family gathering. The one I wouldn't be invited to. The one I'd probably pay for. The silence in my apartment was deafening. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the suffocating kind that presses against your eardrums and reminds you that nobody cares enough to call. I could hear Mrs. Chin next door watching her Korean dramas through the paper-thin walls. I could hear the couple upstairs fighting about money again. But my phone? Silent as a grave. I made boxed macaroni for dinner. 59 cents worth of processed cheese and artificial comfort. The smell filled my tiny kitchen. That particular aroma of desperation and sodium that clings to your clothes and follows you to work the next day. While I stirred the orange paste that barely qualified as food, I thought about them sitting around their granite island, probably eating leftover Hawaiian barbecue, probably laughing about how easily they'd dismissed me. That's when I made the mistake of opening Instagram. Picture after picture of paradise. My father's sunburned face grinning next to a waterfall I'd never see. My mother in a sundress I'd bought her for Christmas, raising a Mai Tai toward a sunset that cost me a month's rent. My brother, my blood brother, the one who shared their DNA and their casual cruelty, building sandcastles with his kids. My kids too, I'd thought. My niece and nephew who called me Aunt Sarah when it was convenient, when they needed birthday presents or babysitting. The caption on my mother's post read, "Nothing like family time in paradise." So grateful for these moments with my loved ones. 47 likes. 33 comments. Every single person who knew me, who knew I'd funded this trip, was liking and commenting like I'd never existed. I scrolled until my eyes burned. I scrolled until my thumb went numb. I scrolled until the weight of their betrayal settled into my bones like lead poisoning. If you've ever felt abandoned by the very people you trusted most, hit subscribe, because these are the stories that remind us we're not alone. And if you won't subscribe, at least comment why. Be honest, why look away? The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls from my mother. 17. Not one the night before when I might have needed to hear her voice, when I might have needed her to explain or apologize or lie to me with enough conviction that I could pretend to believe her. No, these calls came because she needed something. The voicemail started apologetic. "Sarah, honey, we need to talk. There's been a development with Grandma Rose's estate." By the fourth message, the honey had curdled into impatience. "Sarah, this is important. You need to call me back." By the 10th, she dropped all pretense. "Sarah, answer your damn phone. This affects all of us. All of us." Even now, even when she needed me, I was an afterthought. A complication to be managed. I let my phone ring through the 13th, 14th, 15th call while I sat in my cubicle at work, pretending to care about insurance claims and customer service ratings. My coworkers had stopped looking over when my phone buzzed. They'd given up asking if everything was okay when they saw my face. Smart people. They could smell the blood in the water. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Hand-delivered by a courier who made me sign for it like it contained state secrets instead of the ammunition that would blow my family apart. Richardson, Blake and Associates. Attorney at Law. Dear Ms. Sarah Mitchell, we are writing to inform you that you have been named as a beneficiary in the estate of Rose Margaret Mitchell, deceased. Specifically, you have inherited a 1/3 share of the property located at 4247 Maple Grove Drive, valued at approximately $400,000. As per the terms of the will, all beneficiaries must sign the attached documentation before any sale or transfer of the property can proceed. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience to arrange this signature. Sincerely, James Richardson, ESQ. 1/3. Grandma Rose, the woman who'd slipped me $20 bills at Christmas and told me I was her favorite granddaughter, the same woman my parents had banned me from visiting in her final months because I upset her with questions about the family finances, had left me 1/3 of the house that would fund my parents' retirement. The irony was so sharp I could taste blood. The parents who'd spent 18 years reminding me I wasn't really theirs, who'd just excluded me from a family vacation I'd paid for, now desperately needed my signature. Their financial security, their golden years, their whole future depended on me. The daughter they'd discarded like an outdated credit card. For the first time in my adult life, their survival depended on me. Would you forgive them at this point? Comment yes or never below. I want to see the truth flood this section. The phone calls intensified after the letter arrived. 16 calls Thursday morning before I'd even finished my coffee. 23 calls Friday. By Saturday, my voicemail was full, and the messages had evolved from pleading to demanding to threatening. "Sarah, we know you got the letter. This is ridiculous. Just sign the papers. Sarah, you're being childish. This is family business. Sarah, if you don't call back by Monday, we're driving over there." I listened to each message with the detached fascination of a scientist studying a particularly interesting virus. Their desperation was palpable, seeping through the phone speaker like infection. They'd never needed me before. Never called this much when I was paying their bills or buying their groceries or covering their emergencies. But now? Now that I held their future in my hands? Now I was family again. The texts were even better. "Mom, we need you. Just sign this one paper. Mom, don't let pride ruin the family. Mom, Grandma Rose would want us to stay together. Dad, this is bigger than whatever hurt feelings you have. Dad, stop being dramatic and call us back. Brother, what's your problem? Just sign the thing so we can move on." I screenshotted every message, saved every voicemail, built a monument to their hypocrisy that I could visit whenever I needed reminding of who they really were. James Richardson called me on Monday morning. His voice was warm, professional, patient, everything my family's voices weren't. "Ms. Mitchell, I've been fielding quite a few calls from your parents. They seem eager to move forward with the sale. I imagine they are. You should know, you're under no obligation to sign anything. This inheritance is yours, free and clear. You could live in that house if you wanted. You could sell your share independently. You have options. Options. The word felt foreign in my mouth. I'd spent so many years having my choices made for me, being told what I should want, what I should accept, what I should be grateful for. Now I had options. What would happen if I just didn't sign? His chuckle was dry as autumn leaves. Then nothing happens. The property stays in estate limbo indefinitely. Your parents can't sell, can't refinance, can't touch a penny of the equity. They'd be stuck with a house they can't afford to maintain and can't profit from. And if they try to pressure me? A mess. Mitchell, let me be clear about something. Inheritance coercion is a serious matter. If they threaten you, harass you, or attempt to manipulate you into signing, that's grounds for legal action. Sometimes silence is the best reply to betrayal. Subscribe if you've ever believed silence speaks louder than words. And if you won't, then comment below. Do you really think silence is weakness? I stopped answering my phone entirely. Let their calls go straight to voicemail. Let their texts pile up unread. Let their desperation ferment in the silence I'd wrapped around myself like armor. For 28 years, I'd been available. 28 years of dropping everything when they called, of saying yes when I meant no, of swallowing their casual cruelty with a smile. Not anymore. The silence felt powerful in a way I'd never experienced. Every unanswered call was a small victory. Every ignored text was reclaiming a piece of myself I'd given away too easily. I'd spent my whole life afraid of their disapproval, their disappointment, their ability to make me feel small. But what was the worst they could do now? Exclude me from another family event? Treat me like I didn't exist? They'd already done that. They'd already shown me exactly how little I meant to them. The only difference now was that I wasn't pretending it didn't hurt. My apartment felt different in the silence. Bigger somehow. Like the absence of their voices had created space for mine. I started talking to myself, not the muttering of someone losing their mind, but the careful, considered conversations of someone learning to trust their own thoughts. What do you want, Sarah? I asked my reflection in the bathroom mirror. The answer came easier than I expected. I want them to feel what I felt. 3 weeks into my silence campaign, the dinner invitation arrived. Not a text. Not a voicemail. A physical invitation, cream-colored cardstock with embossed lettering like a wedding announcement. The Mitchell family requests the pleasure of your company for dinner on Saturday, October 15th at 6 p.m. We have much to discuss and much to celebrate as a family. The nerve was breathtaking. After excluding me from Hawaii, after years of treating me like a charity case they'd grown tired of supporting, they wanted to play family again. They wanted to sit around their dinner table, the same table where I'd been told I wasn't really one of them, and pretend this was all some misunderstanding. I almost threw the invitation away. Almost. But something in the formal tone, the desperate attempt at normalcy, the sheer audacity of it all made me curious. What exactly did they think they could say to me? What possible explanation could make 28 years of casual cruelty disappear? I decided to find out. Would you sit at that dinner table, or would you burn the invitation? Comment your choice, don't stay silent. Saturday arrived gray and cold, the kind of October evening that makes you believe winter might last forever. I spent 2 hours getting ready, not because I wanted to impress them, but because I wanted to remind them of what they'd lost. What they'd thrown away. I chose a black dress I'd bought for job interviews, but never had occasion to wear. Simple, elegant, expensive enough to make a statement. I did my makeup with the precision of a surgeon, painted my nails the color of fresh blood, wore the pearl earrings Grandma Rose had given me for my college graduation. I looked in the mirror and saw a stranger. Not the grateful adoptee who'd spent her life apologizing for existing. Not the family ATM who'd emptied her savings account for their comfort. This woman had steel in her spine and fire in her eyes. This woman was done begging for scraps of affection from people who'd never learned how to love without conditions. The drive to their house felt like traveling backward through time. Every familiar landmark reminded me of the girl I used to be, hopeful, desperate to belong, willing to pay any price for acceptance. By the time I pulled into their circular driveway, past the luxury cars I'd helped them afford, I felt like I was visiting a museum dedicated to my own naivety. The front door opened before I could knock. My mother stood there in a dress I'd never seen before, her smile so bright it could power a small city. Behind her, I could see the dining room set for 5, my father, my brother, his wife, and 2 empty chairs waiting like an accusation. "Sarah. Oh honey, you look beautiful. Come in, come in. We've missed you so much." The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived through the past month of ignored calls and desperate messages, I might have believed she was genuinely happy to see me. But I knew better now. I knew the difference between love and necessity. The dining room looked exactly the same as it had during my childhood. Same mahogany table, same china cabinet full of dishes we only used for special occasions, same chandelier casting warm light over carefully arranged place settings. The only difference was me. I was different. Changed. Evolved beyond their ability to manipulate. My father stood when I entered, his lawyer's smile perfectly calibrated to convey warmth without sincerity. "Sarah, thank you for coming. We have so much to discuss." My brother barely looked up from his phone. His wife offered a weak wave, the kind of gesture that acknowledges your presence without committing to actual friendliness. Even now, even when they needed me, I was still an obligation to be managed rather than a person to be welcomed. I took my seat at the foot of the table, the same chair I'd occupied for every holiday dinner, every birthday celebration, every family gathering where I'd felt like an outsider looking in. But tonight felt different. Tonight, I wasn't the one who needed something. "Would you sit at that dinner table, or would you burn the invitation? Comment your choice, don't stay silent." The conversation started safe. Weather, work, local news. The kind of small talk you make with acquaintances, not family. But I could feel the tension building like pressure in a sealed container. Every casual comment was weighted with unspoken agenda. Every smile was strained with desperation they were trying to hide. Finally, my father cleared his throat, the same sound he'd made before every lecture about gratitude, every reminder of what they'd given me, every conversation designed to make me feel smaller. "Sarah, we want to address what happened last month. The Hawaii trip. We think there was a misunderstanding. A misunderstanding. $22,000 and complete exclusion from their family vacation was a misunderstanding. We never meant to hurt your feelings," my mother added, her voice dripping with the kind of false concern that made my skin crawl. "You know we love you. You're our daughter." "It was just logistics," my brother chimed in, finally looking up from his phone. "The resort had limited availability. We couldn't change the reservations." The lies came so easily. So smoothly practiced. They'd probably rehearsed this conversation, assigned each other roles in the performance. Good cop, bad cop, voice of reason. All designed to gaslight me into believing my own experience was fiction. I let them talk. Let them explain and excuse and minimize until they'd said everything they'd planned to say. Then I leaned back in my chair, Grandma Rose's chair, I realized, the one she'd always sat in during family dinners, and smiled. "Family doesn't come with receipts," I said, my voice steady as stone. And I already paid $22,000 for the truth. The silence that followed was beautiful. Profound. The kind of quiet that comes after an explosion, when the dust is still settling and everyone's trying to figure out how much damage has been done. My father recovered first, his lawyer instincts kicking in. "Sarah, let's not relitigate the past. We're here to discuss the future." Grandma Rose's house. "You mean my inheritance?" "Our inheritance. The family's inheritance." "No." I stood up slowly, savoring the way they all flinched. "My inheritance. Grandma Rose left me 1/3 of that house. Not us. Not the family. Me. The daughter you reminded me wasn't really yours. The stranger you excluded from your blood family vacation." My mother's mask slipped for just a moment, and I saw the calculation underneath. The cold arithmetic of need and manipulation that had governed every interaction we'd ever had. You're being unreasonable, Sarah. That house represents our family's history. Your family's history, I corrected. You made it very clear that I'm not part of this family. I'm just the ATM you kept around for emergencies. I walked toward the door, past the family photos that had always featured me slightly apart from the others, past the mantelpiece where my achievements had been displayed with the enthusiasm of someone checking items off a list. Where are you going? My father demanded, his voice sharp with panic. We're not done talking. I turned back to look at them one last time. My mother's desperate smile. My father's barely contained rage. My brother's confused entitlement. The family I'd spent 28 years trying to belong to, revealed at last as exactly what they'd always been, strangers who'd benefited from my love without ever returning it. Actually, I said, we are done talking. We've been done for a long time. I was just too stupid to realize it. I left them sitting around their perfect table in their perfect house, surrounded by all the things my money had helped them buy. Let them explain to each other how they'd managed to lose control of the situation. Let them figure out how to proceed without the daughter they'd never really wanted but had always needed. If you think walking away is sometimes the strongest revenge, hit subscribe. If you disagree, comment what you would have done instead. The consequences came swift and brutal, like dominoes falling in a pattern I could have predicted if I'd been paying attention to the mathematics of their desperation rather than the theater of their apologies. The first call came from their realtor on Tuesday morning. I didn't answer, but the voicemail was worth saving. Ms. Mitchell, this is David Chin from Premier Properties. I'm calling about the lawsuit your parents mentioned. I need to discuss the commission structure for the Maple Grove property. Please call me back immediately. Lawsuit. They'd threatened their realtor with legal action rather than admit they couldn't deliver on a sale they'd promised. Classic Mitchell family problem solving. When manipulation fails, try intimidation. By Thursday, the calls multiplied. Mortgage broker. Insurance agent. Property appraiser. A whole ecosystem of professionals who'd been promised a piece of a sale that would never happen. Each message more confused than the last, each one revealing another layer of the financial house of cards my parents had built on the assumption that I would sign whatever they put in front of me. James Richardson called Friday afternoon, his voice warm with barely contained amusement. Ms. Mitchell, I thought you should know your parents hired their own attorney. Apparently, they want to challenge the will. Can they do that? They can try. But Grandma Rose was very specific in her instructions. She met with me personally 3 months before she died, told me exactly why she was leaving you that share. Said you were the only one who visited her without wanting something, the only one who asked about her stories instead of her bank account. The truth hit me like a physical blow. Grandma Rose had known. She'd seen what I'd been too blind to see, understood what I'd been too desperate to accept. Even in death, she was protecting me from the family that had never deserved my loyalty. What did she say exactly? She said, and I quote, "Sarah's the only one who loves me for me. The others love me for what I can give them. When I'm gone, I want her to have the power to choose her own family." Sweet justice or not enough? Comment below. And if this moment gave you chills, subscribe before you scroll away. The neighbors started talking within a week. Mrs. Patterson from next door, who'd watched me grow up in that house, called to ask if the family was going through some difficulties. She'd noticed the for sale sign had disappeared overnight, seen unfamiliar cars in the driveway, heard raised voices through the windows that were usually so carefully controlled. "I just wanted you to know," she said, her voice careful with the kind of gossip that masquerades as concern. "People are asking questions. About the Hawaii trip you paid for. About why you weren't invited. Some folks are starting to put two and two together. The community they'd spent decades cultivating, the reputation they'd built on the foundation of their successful family, was cracking under the weight of their own cruelty. People were talking. People who'd known me since I was 10 years old, who'd watched me mow their lawn for spending money and walk their dogs when they went out of town, were asking uncomfortable questions about why the girl who'd given her family everything had been excluded from their paradise vacation. My brother called me Wednesday morning, bypassing our parents entirely. His voice was strained with an anger I'd never heard before, not anger at me, but anger at the situation, at the consequences, at the reality that his comfortable life was being threatened by my inconvenient principles. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to us?" he said without preamble. "Mom hasn't slept in a week. Dad's drinking again. The bank is asking questions about the mortgage we took out against the house. The house they can't sell. The house you won't let us sell. The house Grandma Rose left to me as much as to you. This is insane, Sarah. You're destroying the family over hurt feelings." Hurt feelings. 28 years of being treated like a grateful charity case, of being reminded that I wasn't really theirs, of being excluded from the family I'd bankrolled, reduced to hurt feelings. "I'm not destroying anything," I said. "I'm just refusing to fix what you broke." The silence stretched between us, filled with years of resentment that went both ways. He'd always known he was the real son, the genetic link that made his place in the family unquestionable. He'd watched me try to earn what he'd been born with, and he'd never once thought to question the fairness of it. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Money? An apology?" "What?" "I want you to leave me alone." "That's it? You're going to ruin all of us because you want to be left alone. You left me alone first. In Hawaii. While I paid for it." I hung up before he could respond, before he could try to twist the conversation into another reminder of what I owed them, what I should be grateful for, what my place in their hierarchy had always been. Would you have taken it this far? Comment yes or no. And if you're still watching, that means this story hooked you. Don't walk away without subscribing. The legal hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in November. Judge Margaret Reeves, a woman whose reputation for cutting through family drama had earned her the nickname, the Truth Detector, presided over a courtroom that felt more like a confessional than a legal proceeding. My parents arrived with their attorney, a young man whose expensive suit couldn't quite hide his uncertainty about the case he'd been hired to argue. They sat on the opposite side of the room like we were getting divorced instead of exposing the hollowness of a relationship that had never been real to begin with. James Richardson laid out the facts with surgical precision. Grandma Rose's mental capacity at the time of the will. Her explicit instructions about the inheritance. The legal impossibility of changing her wishes posthumously just because they'd proven inconvenient. The other attorney tried to argue undue influence, suggested that I'd manipulated a dying woman into changing her will. The accusation was so absurd it bordered on comedy, as if I, the family scapegoat, had somehow gained more influence over Grandma Rose in her final months than the children who'd been managing her finances for years. Judge Reeves listened to both sides with the patience of someone who'd heard every possible variation of family greed disguised as love. When the arguments concluded, she leaned back in her chair and studied us all with eyes that had seen too much human weakness to be surprised by any of it. "Let me make sure I understand the situation," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Mrs. Rose Mitchell left her property equally to her 3 grandchildren. The plaintiffs want the court to void that bequest because they disagree with their deceased mother's decisions about her own estate. Is that correct? The silence was answer enough. Furthermore, Judge Reeves continued, the plaintiffs excluded the defendant from a family vacation that she had financially sponsored, then attempted to pressure her into signing away her inheritance when they realized they needed her cooperation to access their own shares. Do I have that right? My father's attorney opened his mouth to object, then seemed to realize there was no legal remedy for being exposed as fundamentally awful people. "In my 23 years on this bench," Judge Reeves said, "I've learned that sometimes family isn't about blood, it's about loyalty." Mrs. Rose Mitchell clearly understood the difference. This court sees no grounds to overturn her will. She looked directly at me then, and I saw something in her expression that I'd been starving for my entire life: recognition. Not as someone's adopted daughter or grateful charity case, but as a person deserving of respect and legal protection. "Ms. Mitchell," she said, "your inheritance stands as originally written. No one can force you to sign any documents regarding the sale or transfer of that property. You are free to make your own decisions about your own future." The gavel came down like punctuation on the end of a sentence I'd been writing my whole life without realizing it. As we filed out of the courtroom, my father caught my arm near the door. His grip was firm enough to leave marks, desperate enough to confirm everything I'd learned about who he really was when he wasn't getting his way. "This isn't over," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear. "Family is family, Sarah. We'll figure this out." I pulled away from him with the easy strength of someone who'd finally stopped being afraid of disappointing people who'd never cared about disappointing her. "They said I wasn't family," I told him, loud enough for everyone in the hallway to hear. "Today, the law agrees. Would you have taken it this far? Comment yes or no. And if you're still watching, that means this story hooked you. Don't walk away without subscribing." The courthouse steps felt like the edge of the world. November wind cut through my coat, but I barely felt it. Behind me, the building where my legal right to choose my own family had been confirmed. Ahead of me, a life that belonged entirely to me for the first time in 28 years. I walked to my car slowly, savoring each step away from the family that had spent decades teaching me to be grateful for crumbs while they feasted on the love I'd given them so freely. The afternoon sun cut through the gray clouds like a spotlight, illuminating the truth I'd been too afraid to see. They had needed me more than I'd ever needed them. My phone buzzed with a text from James Richardson. "Congratulations. Your grandmother would be proud. Grandma Rose." The woman who'd slipped me $20 bills and told me stories about the old country, who'd taught me to bake bread and listened when I cried about not belonging anywhere. She'd seen what I couldn't see, known what I couldn't accept, and loved me enough to give me the tools to free myself from people who'd confused manipulation with affection. I drove home through neighborhoods where I'd never belonged, past houses full of families who'd never questioned their right to love each other unconditionally. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel envious of what they had. I felt grateful for what I'd learned, that real family isn't something you're born into or adopted into. It's something you choose and build and protect with people who choose you back. My apartment looked different when I walked through the door. Smaller, yes, but also full of possibility. These 400 square feet belong to me. The decisions I made here belong to me. The future I built from this moment forward belong to me. I made myself dinner, not boxed macaroni this time, but real food that required actual cooking. While it cooked, I opened my laptop and started researching Hawaii vacation packages. Not for them. Not to prove anything to anyone. For me. For the family I would choose someday, when I met people who understood that love doesn't come with receipts and loyalty isn't something you have to purchase with your own dignity. What would you have done in my place? Comment below, I'll be reading every response. This is not just my story, it's a mirror for all of us. And if you can watch this far without subscribing, then at least be honest in the comments. Why turn away from truth when it's right here? The weeks that followed brought a parade of revelations that felt like reading my own obituary written by people who'd never bothered to know me while I was alive. Mrs. Patterson called to tell me about the gossip circulating through their social circle, how people were asking uncomfortable questions about why the family's financial problems had started exactly when they'd excluded their most generous member. "Your mother tried to say it was about space limitations at the resort," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice rich with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally found a scandal worth sharing. But then Martha Williams mentioned she'd seen the photos on Facebook. Plenty of space. Plenty of room for one more. The truth was spreading like wildfire through their carefully curated social network. Every charity event my mother attended, every golf game my father played, every school function my brother's children participated in became an opportunity for questions they couldn't answer without admitting what they'd done. My former coworkers started reaching out too. People who'd watched me work overtime to pay for family emergencies that always seemed to happen right before major holidays. People who'd seen me eating ramen for lunch while my family posted pictures of their restaurant dinners. People who'd put the pieces together and realized they'd been watching an extended con game disguised as family love. I always wondered why you never went on vacation, my cubicle neighbor Sarah told me over coffee. Now I know. You were paying for everyone else's. The pattern had been there all along, visible to everyone except the person living it. I'd been so busy trying to earn my place in their lives that I'd never stopped to calculate what that place was actually costing me. But the most devastating revelation came from an unexpected source. My high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Rodriguez, who'd retired the year before but still followed my family's social media presence out of professional curiosity. I need to tell you something, she said when she called. About your college applications. Your parents came to see me senior year after you'd been accepted to that journalism program at Northwestern. They asked me to discourage you from going so far away, said the family needed you close to home. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Northwestern. Full scholarship. The journalism program I'd dreamed about since sophomore year. I'd turned it down because my parents had convinced me I was needed at home, that family came first, that I could get just as good an education at the local state school. They said you'd agreed to stay local, Mrs. Rodriguez continued. But something about the way they said it never sat right with me. I should have reached out to you directly. I should have made sure you knew you had choices. Choices. That word again. The thing they'd spent my entire adolescence and young adulthood systematically stealing from me, one guilt trip at a time. I'd stayed home and commuted to a mediocre state school so I could continue working part-time to help with their bills. I'd studied accounting instead of journalism because they'd convinced me it was more practical, more useful to the family finances. I'd spent my 20s in a job that bored me to tears because it allowed me to be their perpetual safety net. Northwestern. The life I'd never lived. The career I'd never pursued. The version of myself I'd sacrificed on the altar of their approval. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story, because silence only strengthens lies. Until next time, may we all choose truth over betrayal. December brought snow and a strange kind of peace. I'd gotten used to the silence where their demands used to be, the space where their emergencies used to live. My bank account was growing for the first time in years without their constant needs bleeding it dry. My weekends belonged to me. My holidays were mine to design. I started therapy with Dr. Martinez, a woman who specialized in family trauma and had heard every variation of the story I needed to tell. She didn't seem surprised by the adoption angle, or the financial manipulation, or the systematic exclusion disguised as love. Families like yours, she explained during our third session, operate on a scarcity model. They believe love is finite, that there's only so much to go around, so they hoard it and ration it and use it as currency. Real families operate on abundance, the understanding that love multiplies when it's shared freely. The distinction was revelatory. I'd spent my life trying to earn something that healthy families gave without question, while they'd spent my life extracting something that healthy people gave without expectation of return. What do you want your future to look like? Dr. Martinez asked during our session right before Christmas. The question should have been simple, but it terrified me. I'd spent so many years defining myself in relation to their needs that I'd never developed a clear sense of what I actually wanted for myself. I want to travel, I said finally. I want to see Hawaii. But the real Hawaii, not the version they posted on Instagram. I want to write again, maybe take some journalism classes online. I want to build something that belongs to me. And family? Do you want that? Yes, but real family. People who choose me because they want me, not because they need me. Dr. Martinez smiled. That sounds like a good place to start. I spent Christmas alone for the first time in my life. Not lonely. Alone. There's a difference, I'd learned. Lonely is what I'd felt at their dinner table, surrounded by people who tolerated my presence because of my utility. Alone is what I felt in my apartment, surrounded by my own choices and the freedom to make more of them. I cooked myself a real Christmas dinner. Nothing elaborate, but food I'd chosen because I wanted it, not because it was what someone else expected or needed. I watched movies I'd never had time for when I was constantly available for their emergencies. I called Mrs. Patterson to check on her, and Mrs. Rodriguez to thank her for finally telling me the truth about Northwestern. New Year's Eve found me at my laptop, researching journalism programs that accepted adult learners. 28 wasn't too late to start over. 28 wasn't too late to become the person I'd been meant to be before I'd learned to shrink myself to fit their expectations. My phone buzzed at 11:47 p.m. A text from my mother, "We miss you. Happy New Year." I stared at the message for a long time, waiting for the familiar stab of guilt, the muscle memory of obligation that had governed my responses for so many years. But it didn't come. Instead, I felt something I'd never experienced before, clarity. They missed me, but they'd never actually known me. They missed my function in their lives, not my presence. They missed having someone to call when they needed money, someone to blame when things went wrong, someone to exclude when they wanted to feel superior. I deleted the message without responding. At midnight, while fireworks exploded over the city and people celebrated the promise of new beginnings, I made myself a promise. I would never again confuse being needed with being loved. I would never again pay for a seat at a table where I wasn't welcome. I would never again apologize for taking up space in my own life. The future stretched ahead of me like an unmapped country, full of possibilities I'd never had the courage to imagine. Somewhere out there was the family I would choose, the career I would build, the life I would create with my own hands and my own heart. For the first time in 28 years, I was free to find them. And I intended to. What would you have done in my place? Comment below, I'll be reading every response. This is not just my story, it's a mirror for all of us. And if you can watch this far without subscribing, then at least be honest in the comments. Why turn away from truth when it's right here? The year that followed became the year I learned who I really was when I wasn't performing for an audience that would never applaud. Spring brought journalism classes and weekend trips to places I'd only dreamed about while funding other people's adventures. Summer brought new friendships with people who valued my company instead of my checkbook. Fall brought acceptance to a master's program in investigative journalism, a full-time commitment that would have been impossible when I was constantly available for their emergencies. But it was the following winter, almost exactly 1 year after my Christmas alone, when I truly understood what Grandma Rose had given me. I was researching a story about inheritance fraud for my capstone project when I found her journals in a box that James Richardson had been holding for me. Her handwriting was shaky but determined. Sarah came to see me today. She didn't ask about money or property or what I might leave her. She asked about the stories I've been trying to write, about whether I thought it was too late to learn new things. She's the only one who sees me as more than a bank account with wrinkles. Page after page of observations about family visits that were really financial consultations, about grandchildren who called only when they needed something, about the daughter she'd never legally adopted, but who'd been more family to her than the children who shared her DNA. I've decided to leave Sarah a third of the house. Not because she needs the money, but because she needs the power to choose. She's spent her whole life trying to earn love that should have been freely given. Maybe this will help her understand her own worth. The last entry was dated 2 weeks before she died. Sarah brought me soup when I was sick. Didn't want anything in return. Didn't mention the will. Didn't ask about inheritance. Just stayed and talked about books and dreams and all the places we wanted to travel. If I could have chosen my granddaughter, I would have chosen her. I cried reading those words. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of being seen and valued for exactly who I was by someone who'd mattered to me more than I'd ever admitted to myself. 6 months later, I graduated with honors and a job offer from a major newspaper. The signing bonus was enough to finally take that Hawaii trip I'd been dreaming about, not the resort vacation my parents had enjoyed at my expense. but a working journalist's adventure documenting stories of indigenous culture and environmental conservation. I packed light and traveled alone, but I wasn't lonely. I'd learned the difference. I hiked volcanoes and swam with sea turtles and interviewed native storytellers who taught me that family is something you weave together with intention and care, not something you're born into or trapped by. On my last night in Hawaii, I sat on a beach watching the sunset paint the sky in colors that no Instagram filter could capture. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Martinez. "How are you feeling?" I thought about it for a long time before responding, free. Because that's what Grandma Rose had really left me in that will. Not a third of a house or the power to control my parents' financial future. She'd left me permission to choose my own family, to write my own story, to stop apologizing for taking up space in a world that had always been big enough for all of us. The family that excluded me? They were still fighting over the house they couldn't sell, still blaming me for consequences they'd created, still missing the point entirely. But that wasn't my story anymore. My story was just beginning. What would you have done in my place? Comment below, I'll be reading every response. This is not just my story, it's a mirror for all of us. And if you can watch this far without subscribing, then at least be honest in the comments. Why turn away from truth when it's right here? Subscribe so you don't miss the next story, because silence only strengthens lies. Until next time, may we all choose truth over betrayal.